Hello and welcome back to the Villa podcast. I'm here, as always, with my good friend Dan Wiseman. Dan, Aston Villa 3, Preston North End nil. We've booked our ticket to Wembley, hopefully not for the last time this season.
I like it, mate. I like it. Yes, indeed, right. Isn't it? It's of all the great competitions we're now playing in, of all the fixtures, there's still something so sweet about the FA Cup, isn't there? Something so unique. Like there's a different atmosphere, and yeah, I think you can kind of see how much it means to everybody, and so it was very, very nice indeed, mate. Very, very nice indeed.
Do you know what? There's been all this chat in the lead up to maybe the Carabao Cup final, going a bit back, from the pundits, from like Jamie Carragher's on the overlap saying, I think that the Carabao Cup's actually a better competition than the FA Cup. Were you just saying that because that was the only cup you were in, Jamie? Is that why? Because I don't think anybody thinks that the Carabao Cup's better than the FA Cup. And if they do, then what are you even doing? Because this is the big boy. This is the premier cup competition in this country. So for us to be in the semi-final, I'm absolutely delighted with, mate, because the run, it's been pretty straightforward on paper, but when you draw, so many Premier League teams, we've had West Ham, we've had Spurs, the fact that I don't want to say rewarded because obviously Preston have put in the hard yards to get into this position as well. So it's obviously, with no disrespect to Preston North End, they deserve to be at the stage of the competition that they had reached. Um, it was nice that it was a game that, again, no disrespect to Preston at all. We put out a full strength side essentially, and it was business as usual for 90 minutes, professional performance, 3-0 win, as most people would have anticipated with this tie.
Yeah, the draw's kind of opened up for us, hasn't it? Really, I think even with the semi-final draw, obviously Palace are something of a bogey team of ours, but the league form, the league table will tell you that the best two teams outside of the three left in this competition have ended up drawing each other in the other semi-final. And so yeah, I think even that run through to the final is preferable. I think it's fair to say. Although as I say, we have had our fair share of poor results recently against Palace, you do hope that on an open Wembley pitch on a sunny afternoon in April, that hopefully the Villa boys can turn up and get us through that game. I would mark as kind of as the favourites, but it certainly won't be easy. Ollie guys has got those, I think, 10 of their last 14 games have been wins for Palace, so they're playing really, really well. Obviously, there's a little bit of time between now and then for things to change for both teams. Potentially, we've got some big games of our own coming up, and so yeah, I think even the run, this has been a preferable run really to the final. I think of all the four teams left, that every team's got a great chance to win it. Really, you probably won't get many. This isn't quite Bradford in the semi-finals of the League Cup a few years ago, but it's probably as good as we've had since, considering the caliber of the teams at the moment in the Premier League, considering how virtually any of the top 10 are a tough draw on their day. But the traditional big boys, for us to have only had to go through Spurs at home to this point is pretty good, and we've made the most of it. We've won the games we're supposed to win, and it's kind of got us to this point where we have a very FA Cup semi-final, Crystal Palace. You take that every day of the week, and so yeah, it's a very, very good opportunity to make the final, but definitely won't be easy.
No, absolutely, man. Absolutely. But we've got to fancy ourselves just because of who's left in the competition. And that goes for everybody else. That goes for Brighton. That goes for Forest. It goes for City as well. Looked like Bournemouth, had a solid first half there, but couldn't obviously hold on in the end. I think it would have blown it right open if Bournemouth had come through. But we were saying before the game, mate, weren't we? I don't fancy any of these teams. Out of all of them, like, ironically, City's the one I fancy because it's the wounded tiger that, uh I just don't like. There's so much on it for everyone, like City included as well, like considering the season that they've had. For them to end the season potentially with silverware in the form of an FA Cup as they go into the £1 billion FIFA Club World Cup, all the money that's up for grabs there, teams are going to take that seriously. there's obviously a lot of motivation for City to do that. So it's not ideal to draw any of these teams. Like Crystal Palace, I think I'm right in saying they've never won a trophy in their entire career. And obviously Forest have had a uh wait, did I say Brighton earlier? I meant Forest, but um it is Forest, isn't it? Am I getting confused? It is Forest, yeah. I've I, I've really thrown myself off by saying Brighton, but obviously, back the season that Forest are having, and the fact that it's been again so long since they've won a trophy as well, and just the momentum that they carry this season, we've seen what in a similar vein how that helps Newcastle go and win their final. That kind of momentum, the energy that was around the game, the fact that it felt like it was now or never for this like iteration of the Newcastle project to go and get a win, like a win in a final and win a trophy. Uh, it's interesting. So it's going to be really stressful. This is going to be really stressful, but it's a fantastic opportunity nevertheless, mate, isn't it? And especially, like I tweeted earlier, winners win with a photo of Emmy, Rashford, Asensio. It's key for me. These guys, they've been there on bigger occasions, if not the same occasions. In Rashford's case, and they know how to get the business done. And Marcus Rashford could make his if Villa win the FA Cup. I know we're obviously 2 games away from that, but if Villa win the FA Cup, Marcus Rashford could be the only player in history to win back-to-back FA Cups with different teams, which is crazy, right? That's just obscene. Um, and I thought he played really well today, mate. I thought he played really well. I know we spoke about that nine position not necessarily being as favourable, just with how Preston played, especially in the first half, low block, not much space for him to manoeuvre. He obviously doesn't put in as much of that groundwork off the ball as Ollie does in terms of running and chasing and moving people around. That being said, it's not like he didn't do it. It's just you do get more from Ollie. And for him to finally get his 2 goals, mate. London buses.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. It's yeah, it goes to show why Una's and the touchline and not yourself and I, because yeah, we were having that conversation at half time, mate, and yeah, it doesn't really feel like the game for Rashford at as a number 9. Like all the space in the first half was on the wings. It seemed to be through Cash and through Dean that when they had a chance to come forward, that we were making the most ground. Those kind of central areas where someone like Rodgers is usually so effective. They just weren't really opening up in the first half. And, I kind of, assessed the second half on the same basis, but I probably had the foresight to know that over time, Preston would have to come out a little eventually. And, Preston had a good start to the second half, actually. They probably started the brighter of the 2 teams, but it was probably their own kind of, their own downfall in the end, in that it made the game, it opened right up. Whilst we had so much of the ball in the first half, there was no space behind that back line, which is where, Rashford wants to play. And all of a sudden, there were turnovers in the midfield. The fullbacks were pushing up a little bit higher for Preston. And all of a sudden, the counter-attack that was on, there was a little bit more space in behind that defence. There was a good chance. I think it's Rodgers goes through the middle, and there's a ball onto Asensio out on the right wing, and he cuts back for Rashford. There were kind of few chances that kind of, were the warning signs really for Preston. It meant that Rashford was able to really, use the best of his abilities, and it paid off with, obviously the first goal isn't an archetypal Marcus Rashford goal, but was picked out really, really nicely by Luke Dean. But you could see almost immediately what the goal did for him. He was playing with, full mojo, full confidence. You could see him even in the way that he was squaring up defenders. But this one clearly, whilst, he's probably not the one to show it, probably meant a bit to him, because I thought his confidence really, really showed. And you could see it in the penalty that he took. Obviously we didn't really realise it from the other end of the ground, but he doesn't look at the ball. I'm sure we've all seen those clips where, he's kind of staring at the goalkeeper the whole time, waiting for him to move. And as soon as, the keeper moves the muscle, Rashford's able to tuck it in the other side. And so think you could, whilst I don't think he's been short of confidence, you could see almost immediately, and then there was, you were seeing a slightly different player, one that was taking it on players with a little bit more conviction, with a little bit more belief, which is exactly what we need. And so it was a really, really important game for him to kind of get that monkey off his back and get those first goals because, look, whilst I don't think any Villa fan was holding it against him, it's kind of one of those ones where if they don't come against Preston, where you're playing as a sole number 9, you know, you only can't, the games are only going to get harder. And so, yeah, I feel it's really, really important, particularly with him playing as a striker, to kind of get those 2 goals, get himself half the mark, because, yeah, it would have been, as I say, you're playing in harder fixtures pretty much every game now until the end of the season.
I mean, he's saving himself for PSG away, isn't he? We know Rashford has form for PSG away. He's did it twice now. Got to do it a third time. That's obviously all to come. But like, we've had the break. There's been sort of varying success for the guys that have gone away as well. I don't know if many of the listeners or you would have seen mate Emmy doing keepy uppies against Brazil
Yeah.
when Argentina were 4-1 up. It's just brilliant. He's just an absolute bastard. You gotta love it. You gotta respect it. But for us to pick up after the break, we ended uh like a week and a half before everybody else with how the fixtures worked. Obviously, Bruges was the last game, so there's the sort of the emotion, the high of reaching the quarterfinals of the Champions League to and I don't want to say come back down to earth because obviously this is an FA Cup quarterfinal. This is a big deal. But considering all the travelling and the fact people have been here, there, and everywhere, we've come into this on a 4-game win run. We've been able to extend that to 5 games now. That's really good. And I know we must sound like broken records, mate, but with the fixtures that we've got coming up, with the teams that we have to play against, I believe it's Nottingham Forest next, or it's Brighton, then Nottingham Forest, sorry, at home after that. We just have to, like, it's important that we win games. We have to keep this momentum. And I think it's been a little while since our form chart over the last 5 games has looked this good and this green. And I'm just really happy that it was like business as usual. And we've just got to start winning games in the league again. Like let's just keep climbing the Premier League table as well while we're at it, mate. Because it kind of feels like we're fighting on all fronts. Where things are sort of closer to getting back to normality. Right, Amadou came back today. We both thought, oh God, he's gonna come off again after there was the one clattering. But we seem to only be like a Ross Barkley away from a fully fit and firing squad, which, considering the games, considering the running, it's huge in it, mate.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right to say that kind of attention turns to the league now, and what a stretch that it is really into the end of the season. It's only really Southampton away is a game that we have now to the end of the season from teams that aren't competing on similar fronts as we are. It's Brighton, Forest, Newcastle, City, Fulham, Bournemouth, Spurs, United. So it's a real gauntlet of fixtures, but it's in our hands ultimately, to use that old cliche. And you kind of look at the FA Cup, mate, and for all of its glory and for what a piece of silverware would mean, is it our easiest route to the Europa League? Potentially. I would almost say certainly. You only have to win games, whereas in the Premier League, you have to win, how many games we've got? Like 6, 7 games? What, 4, 5 minimum? And probably draw the other 2 to make up that ground. We're 9th at the moment. So it's kind of leapfrog the likes of Brighton, Newcastle. Those are the guys that we're kind of competing with 2 or 3 points ahead of us. And, they're looking pretty good to end the season. And so that's the other thing with this trophy. It's a kind of now with the Champions League in there as well. It's a real gauntlet of fixtures. But that Palace game, that defeat had to be a line in the sand. It had to be a turning point. And to be fair to the boys, it does look like they'd used it as exactly that. We've kind of won, what is it now, 5 games in a row since then, 2 in the Champions League, 2 in the FA Cup, 1 in the league. We've used that result in the best way that we possibly could. When you look at the next 2 games, Brighton away, Forest at home, PSG away, sorry. You're going to need every ounce of good form and good fortune you can get.
Absolutely. Do you know what? I was thinking about this on the train earlier, mate, because I was saying to Sam earlier, like I'm over the Nottingham Forest talk. Like I just find it not boring because I've always maintained on the podcast that and listeners will remember as well who've been listening for a few seasons. Like when we were like doing what we were doing and like qualifying for Conference League or even like last season, like getting into the top four and qualifying for the Champions League. It was unbelievable. It never felt like there was this like buzz around what we were doing. And I've kind of noticed that a little bit more now because all everybody seems to be doing is talk about Nottingham Forest. And don't get me wrong, wonderful achievement, but like they've also spent 500 million on about 50 players since coming up, which again, like we've done a similar thing. So it's not like neither situation is necessarily this like fairy tale, like the little train who could, like push along. Like it's obviously surprising because we've both disrupted the status quo and are, in our case, continuing to do so and hang around those spaces was arguably a worse squad, having, losing key players last season and maybe not necessarily directly replacing them and all that kind of stuff. Um, like the forest noise is annoying, but again, like it brings me back to like I'm glad no one's talking about us because like all that matters is that on game week 38 we finish fourth, maybe fifth, most likely fifth, but we know that fifth will give you that extra Champions League berth this season anyway, especially if we continue to advance in the tournament and if Arsenal do the absolute unthinkable and go and beat Real Madrid over two legs and then we get an all English tie in the semi final, it all but secures that coefficiency spot for fifth. So as long as we can do what we're doing and we get a form of European football, ideally Champions League, if not Europa, conference would probably be worst case scenario. I know that's like a first world problem to have, but in terms of like Asensio, Rashford, all that kind of stuff, there's a lot of impetus on us to get Champions League football. Like, let's just like go and do it. Just do it, Villa. Like more power to us as well. And like I think it's almost like maybe it's because teams expect us to be around there now that there isn't that noise this year. But obviously that wasn't necessarily the case last season. But I just like I do. I was saying earlier, I don't fancy. I fancy us in like a one-off game against anyone, which is why I think we're doing so well in these knockout competitions because you can only approach it as a one game at a time. And I just hope that that's how we approach every game now, and that we're not looking too far forward. And I know, we've gone through the running just there, mate, but it has to be like the whole focus has to be Brighton. And then on Thursday morning, the whole focus has to be Forest. And then after on Sunday morning, the whole focus has to be PSG. I think that's the only way we will be able to achieve what we need to on all fronts, right? Regardless of outcomes or whatever, we could crash out of the Champions League, we could lose the FA Cup semi-final. That thinking and application is the only thing that will lead us to getting, fifth in the Premier League.
Yeah, I think as well, it's kind of about minimizing mistakes. And, like there's going to be a slip up between now and the end of the season. Of course there is. But too many games to play for there not to be, there's some 12 games remaining. There's going to be a slip up. There's going to be a bad game. At the very least, one, two, like choosing where we have them and when is right to have them. Obviously, I very much doubt in the games that we have it's going to be unbeaten to the end of the season in the league. Hey, I hope I'm wrong, but again, when you kind of throw in PSG in there, and you're absolutely right in saying that that is going to draw a lot of the focus, and maybe we've been fortunate with Southampton away, sandwiched in between them, but as soon as you come out of that PSG game, it's you're straight into a game against Newcastle, and so yeah, I think there's so many different factors at play, but I don't want to say the stars are aligning, but when you talk about that squad coming back to full fitness, mate, when you talk about the right guys going away and doing well on international duty, Rashford gets his first goals. There's all sorts of stuff which is all kind of happening at the right time, and that's kind of if you're looking at something, it's probably those factors culminating that you hope we can kind of put in one final stretch until the end of the season.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be chaos. It's going to be stressful. It's going to be stressful, but
Yes. Yeah.
we're going to be here for that journey, guys. And we thank you for joining us on that journey and for continuing to do so. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Let us know who you'd start against Brighton. I think that's going to be quite an interesting one considering the subs who came in. Like, obviously, Rashford played unbelievably. So there's a lot of questions for Wednesday. And I'm sure we'll be back on Wednesday night, mate, to debrief that, won't we? So
Absolutely.
if you guys enjoyed, hit a like, comment your thoughts below, and subscribe if you haven't. Up the Villa.